There is a shadow fact haunting the Canadian landscape, one that politicians and major bank economists refuse to utter in their glossy quarterly reports. While the headline GDP numbers suggest we are avoiding a technical recession, the reality on the ground tells a much darker story. Canada's GDP per capita has been in a free fall for nearly 2 years. We are technically growing the pie by adding more people, but everyone's individual slice is getting smaller and thinner. You feel it every morning when you wake up in your overpriced rental or look at your mortgage statement. The visceral feeling of working harder, moving faster, and producing more, yet somehow ending the month with less than you had 5 years ago, isn't a figment of your imagination. It is a systemic extraction of wealth. The middle class, the very backbone of the Canadian identity, is being hollowed out from the inside. We were promised that if we went to school, got a good job, and contributed to our CPP, we'd be set. But the rules of the game were changed while we were sleeping. As we peel back the layers of this economic shift, you'll see why the Canadian dream is being replaced by a Canadian survival reality. But what is the specific mechanism driving this decline? The answer begins in a place you visit every week, but no longer recognize. Walk into any Loblaws, Sobeys, or Metro today, and the atmosphere has shifted. It's no longer just about the price of goods, it's the palpable anxiety in the aisles. You see people hovering over the 50% off stickers like vultures, or staring at a pack of chicken breasts that now costs as much as a decent meal used to. The emotional pain of scanning your PC Optimum card only to see a total that rivals a car payment is a uniquely Canadian trauma. We are told inflation is cooling, yet the $8 block of butter and the $10 bag of grapes say otherwise. This isn't just supply chain issues, it's the consolidation of power. In Canada, 3 major players control the vast majority of our food supply, and while their profits hit record highs, the average family is forced to decide between fresh produce and paying the heating bill. The shadow fact here is that your grocery bill is the first line of defense in an economic war you didn't know you were fighting. We are paying more for less, a phenomenon known as shrinkflation that has become the standard operating procedure for our domestic monopolies. But why is the government standing by? As we look closer, the grocery store is just the tip of the iceberg. The real anchor dragging us down is the very roof over our heads, and the trap is about to spring shut. The Canadian housing market is no longer a market. It's a feudal system. If you bought a home in the GTA or GVA 15 years ago, you are a member of the new landed gentry. If you didn't, you are likely a serf, paying half your post-tax income to someone else's equity. The emotional weight of this is staggering. Young professionals, the doctors, engineers, and teachers of tomorrow, are looking at fixer-uppers in Oshawa or Surrey priced at over $1 million and realizing the math simply doesn't work. The curiosity gap here lies in the disconnect. How can a country with the second largest landmass on Earth have a housing shortage? The answer is a toxic cocktail of zoning red tape, predatory speculation, and a surge in population that our infrastructure was never designed to handle. You're told to just move, but move where? The contagion has spread to Calgary, Halifax, and even small-town Ontario. The visceral pain of knowing you might never own a piece of the country you call home is leading to a massive psychological shift. People are delaying marriage, delaying children, and losing their sense of belonging. But there's a deeper secret about these houses. They aren't just homes anymore. They are the only thing keeping the Canadian economy from total collapse, and that makes them a dangerous gamble for everyone involved. The Bank of Canada's interest rate hikes were described as a necessary medicine to kill inflation, but for many Canadians, the medicine is proving more lethal than the disease. If you took out a variable rate mortgage when rates were at rock bottom, you are now facing the trigger rate nightmare. We are talking about monthly payments jumping by $1,000, $2,000, or even $3,000. This is the visceral reality of the debt trap. You're working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, but all that extra effort is being swallowed whole by interest. It's a treadmill that's moving faster than you can run. The shadow fact that the BOC won't highlight is that Canadian household debt-to-income levels are among the highest in the G7. We are a nation built on a foundation of cheap credit, and now that the credit isn't cheap, the foundation is cracking. You feel the stress in your chest every time you open a bank statement. This isn't just about spending less on lattes, it's about a structural shift where the cost of borrowing has outpaced the growth of wages for decades. The middle class is being squeezed between the anvil of high prices and the hammer of high interest rates. But what happens when the CRA comes for their share of your shrinking pie? The tax bite in Canada is becoming a wound that refuses to heal.
In Canada, we take pride in our social safety net, but the CRA tax bite is starting to feel less like a contribution and more like a penalty for success. When you factor in federal tax, provincial tax, carbon taxes, and the ever-increasing CPP and EI deductions, a high earner in Ontario or Quebec can see nearly 50%. The TFSA and RRSP were marketed as the ultimate tools for Canadian financial freedom, but for many, they have become an illusion of progress. The curiosity gap here is that most Canadians are using these accounts entirely wrong, or worse, they don't have enough left over at the end of the month to even contribute. The shadow fact is that the RRSP refund isn't a gift. It's a deferred tax liability that could bite you even harder in retirement when rates are higher or your OAS is clawed back. Meanwhile, the TFSA is often treated as a glorified savings account, earning 1% interest while inflation eats 4% of its value every year. The emotional pain of seeing your savings lose purchasing power is a slow-motion car crash. You're told to invest in the TSX, but the Canadian stock market is heavily weighted in banks and energy, the very sectors that are squeezing your wallet. It's a closed loop where you're investing in the companies that are charging you the fees. We are taught to be safe with our money, but in the new Canadian economy, safe is the most dangerous thing you can be. If you aren't maximizing these accounts with a surgical precision, you aren't building wealth, you're just slowing down your descent into poverty. But there's a bigger shift happening that no amount of RRSP contributions can fix: the death of intergenerational mobility. The intergenerational wealth gap in Canada has created two distinct classes of citizens: those who will inherit a house and those who will never own one. This is the shadow fact that is tearing the social fabric of the country apart. If you're a 30-year-old in Vancouver whose parents don't own property, you are effectively locked out of the middle class, regardless of your degree or work ethic. The visceral unfairness of this is poisoning the Canadian spirit. We used to be a meritocracy. Now we are becoming an inheritocracy. The emotional pain for parents is just as sharp. They see their children struggling to achieve even half of what they did at the same age. The bank of mom and dad is the only thing keeping the real estate market afloat. But what happens to the families who don't have a bank to draw from? They are being relegated to a permanent renter class, where their labor subsidizes the lifestyle of the asset-owning class. This shift is happening right now, and it's creating a level of resentment that hasn't been seen in Canada for generations. We are witnessing the end of the work hard, get ahead promise. And as the labor market changes, the pressure is only going to intensify. The next shift involves the very people we are bringing in to save the economy. Canada's immigration policy is often touted as our greatest strength, but there is a shadow fact regarding the labor market that is rarely discussed in the mainstream media. We are bringing in record numbers of people, over 1 million a year, to fill labor shortages. Yet we see international students and new immigrants lining up by the hundreds for a single minimum wage job at Tim Hortons. This isn't about helping people, it's about wage suppression. By flooding the low-skill labor market, corporations can keep wages stagnant, even as the cost of living explodes. The emotional pain is felt by both the newcomer who was promised a Canadian dream and the Canadian-born worker whose wages no longer cover the rent. It's a race to the bottom, where the only winners are the big box retailers and the landlords who can squeeze 10 people into a 3-bedroom house. The curiosity gap here is, why is the government pushing for more growth when the infrastructure, hospitals, schools, and housing is already at a breaking point? This is the economic shift in its most raw form. We are prioritizing GDP growth over the quality of life of the individual citizen. The result is a two-Canada system where the gap between the haves and have-nots is no longer a gap, it's a canyon. The two Canadas are moving in opposite directions. On one side, you have the asset owners, those who own homes, stocks, and businesses who have seen their net worth balloon thanks to asset inflation. On the other side, you have the wage earners, whose income is being decimated by the very same inflation. This is the visceral reality of the K-shaped recovery.
While the news talks about the TSX hitting new highs, you're looking at your bank account wondering how you're going to afford winter tires. The shadow fact is that Canada has become one of the most unproductive economies in the developed world. Instead of investing in innovation, technology, or manufacturing, we have poured all our capital into flipping houses to each other. We are literally betting our future on the price of 4 walls and a roof. This shift is turning Canada into a rent-seeking economy, where wealth is extracted rather than created. The curiosity gap is, how long can a society function when the people who do the actual work, the nurses, the truckers, the farmers, can no longer afford to live in the communities they serve? The answer is buried in the rising rates of household debt and the quiet desperation of the Canadian suburbs. For young families, the cost of basic survival in Canada has become a luxury. Even with the promised $10 a day childcare, the reality is years-long waiting lists and a shortage of spots that forces parents to stay out of the workforce, further straining the family budget. The emotional pain of wanting to provide for your child but being stifled by the sheer cost of diapers, formula, and space is a heavy burden. The shadow fact is that the middle class now requires a dual-income household just to achieve what a single-income household did 30 years ago. We are running twice as fast just to stay in the same place. The visceral feeling of never getting ahead is leading to a burnout epidemic. Canadians are some of the most stressed people in the G7, not because we don't want to work, but because the reward for that work has been devalued. The curiosity gap is, if we are one of the wealthiest nations on Earth, why does it feel like we are living in a state of constant scarcity? The shift is moving us toward a future where the traditional family unit is under such economic pressure that it's beginning to fracture. And as the debt piles up, the pressure becomes an escapable trap. The Canadian debt trap is the silent engine of our economy. We are a nation of debt slaves, shackled to mortgages, car loans, and credit cards that carry interest rates that would have been unthinkable a few years ago. The visceral pain of seeing your credit card balance barely move despite making the minimum payment is the new Canadian norm. The shadow fact is that the Canadian banking system is designed to keep you in a cycle of perpetual interest payments. We have some of the highest banking fees in the world and some of the least competition. When the Bank of Canada raises rates, the big banks are quick to hike the interest they charge you, but curiously slow to raise the interest they pay you on your savings. This is the extraction in action. The curiosity gap here is, why do we tolerate a system where the 5 biggest banks make tens of billions in profit every quarter, while the average citizen is one missed paycheck away from insolvency? This shift isn't an accident. It's a feature of a financial system that prioritizes institutional stability over individual prosperity. We are the fuel for the fire, and the fire is getting hotter. But the most dangerous part of this debt isn't the interest, it's the loss of freedom. The old adage, work hard and you'll succeed, has become a cruel joke in the modern Canadian economy. We have become a nation of the working poor. You can have a master's degree and a professional designation, yet still find yourself living with roommates or in your parents' basement at 35. The emotional pain of this stalled life is immense. It's a loss of dignity and a loss of agency. The shadow fact is that real wages in Canada, when adjusted for the actual cost of housing and food, have been stagnant for decades. We are essentially being paid in a currency that is melting. The visceral feeling of working for nothing is driving a surge in quiet quitting and a general sense of apathy. Why give your all to a company when you know you'll never be able to afford a home near the office? The curiosity gap is, what happens to a country's productivity when its workers lose hope? This is the major economic shift happening right now, a decoupling of effort from reward. We are moving toward a society where your status is determined not by your contribution to society, but by your proximity to debt and assets. This is the death of the Canadian meritocracy, and the replacement is a cold, hard hierarchy of wealth. The retirement crisis is the ticking time bomb that no one wants to talk about. For decades, the Freedom 55 dream was the goal. But for the current generation of workers, Freedom 75, or work until you die, is the more likely reality. The shadow fact is that the CPP, Canada Pension Plan, was never meant to be a full retirement solution. It was only meant to replace about 25% to 33% of your pre-retirement earnings. With the cost of living where it is, that's not even enough to cover rent in a secondary market. The visceral fear of outliving your money is a constant shadow for millions of Canadians. The emotional pain of seeing seniors returning to the workforce as greeters or delivery drivers because their fixed income can't keep up with the price of eggs is a national disgrace. The curiosity gap is, if we are told the economy is resilient, why are our elders struggling to survive? The shift is away from a dignified retirement and toward a future of permanent employment. The middle class is realizing that the golden years were a historical anomaly, and for the rest of us, the future looks much more uncertain. This is why the TFSA RRSP mistakes we mentioned earlier are so catastrophic. There is no margin for error anymore.
We are living in a subscription economy that is slowly bleeding the Canadian household dry. It's not just Netflix and Spotify. It's the Canadian monopolies charging you a subscription for your basic existence. Your cell phone plan is among the most expensive in the world. Your internet bill is a ransom. Your insurance premiums in provinces like Ontario and Alberta are astronomical. The shadow fact is that Canadians are being nickel and dimed to death by a lack of competition. We pay a Canadian premium on almost everything. The visceral frustration of seeing a cheaper plan across the border in the US while being told you have to pay $90 a month for 20 gigabytes of data is a constant reminder of our oligopoly problem. The curiosity gap is, why does the CRTC and other regulators allow this to continue? The shift is towards a rental society where you own nothing, not your car, not your home, not even the software on your phone. Everything is a monthly fee that can be raised at any time. This death by 1,000 cuts is how the middle class is being liquidated. You don't go broke all at once. You go broke $20 at a time across 50 different bills. And while you're distracted by these small leaks, a massive flood is coming from the small business sector. Small businesses were once the heartbeat of the Canadian town square, but they are being systematically eradicated by corporate consolidation. The visceral pain of seeing a local hardware store or a family-run cafe close down, only to be replaced by a generic big box chain or another Rexall, is the sound of a community losing its soul. The shadow fact is that government policy in Canada heavily favors the too-big-to-fail corporations. During the lockdowns, small shops were forced to close, while Costco and Walmart stayed open. The curiosity gap here is, if small businesses employ the majority of Canadians, why are they treated as an afterthought by the CRA and the big banks? The shift is toward a monopoly economy, where a handful of families and corporations control everything we eat, where we live, and how we communicate. This concentration of wealth is the ultimate enemy of the middle class. It removes choice, suppresses wages, and kills innovation. When the local entrepreneur can't compete with the subsidized giant, the Canadian dream of building something of your own dies with them. We are becoming a nation of employees for a few massive entities, and that is a very dangerous place to be for our economic sovereignty. The brain drain to the United States is no longer just a trickle, it's a flood. Our most talented doctors, software engineers, and researchers are looking at the math and realizing that they can earn 50% more in the US while paying 30% less for a home and significantly less in taxes. The visceral reality is that Canada is becoming a training ground for the American economy. We subsidize the education of our best and brightest, only for them to take their talents and tax dollars south of the border because they can't afford a life here. The emotional pain for Canada is a loss of future potential. Every time a young innovator leaves, a piece of our future economy goes with them. The shadow fact is that Canada's productivity gap with the US is at an all-time high. We are losing the race for the 21st century because we have made it too expensive for the winners to stay. The curiosity gap is, how can we expect to fix our healthcare or our tech sector if we are driving away the very people who can fix it? This shift is hollowing out our intellectual capital, leaving us with an economy that is increasingly reliant on real estate and resource extraction. We are trading our brains for bricks, and it's a losing trade. The psychological toll of this economic shift is a loneliness and stress epidemic.
When you have to work 2 jobs just to pay for a basement apartment, you don't have time for community, for volunteering, or for friends. The visceral feeling of isolation in our major cities is profound. We are becoming a society of economic units rather than citizens. The emotional pain is expressed in rising rates of anxiety and depression, directly linked to financial insecurity. The shadow fact is that economic stress is one of the leading causes of domestic strife and health problems in Canada, yet our public healthcare system barely covers mental health. The curiosity gap is, what is the cost of a broken social fabric? You can't measure community in GDP, but you can feel its absence in the coldness of our streets. The shift is toward a transaction-based society, where every interaction has a price tag. We are losing the social capital that made Canada a great place to live. As the middle class disappears, the shared experiences that bound us together, the local hockey game, the community barbecue, are becoming luxuries that fewer can afford. We are becoming a nation of strangers, united only by our common struggle to pay the bills.
Now let's revisit that shadow fact about GDP per capita. The government uses high immigration numbers to keep the aggregate GDP growing, which looks good on a global stage. But GDP per capita, the amount of economic output per person, is the true measure of a nation's standard of living. In Canada, that number has been flat or declining. This is the secret recession. We are getting poorer on an individual basis while the country grows. This is a massive economic shift that is being masked by clever accounting. The visceral reality is that you are feeling poorer because you are poorer. The curiosity gap is, why is this being ignored? If we were honest about our declining productivity, we would have to admit that our economic model is broken. We have relied on more people rather than more efficiency for too long. The emotional pain of this realization is that the growth we see on the news is a mirage. It's not making your life better. It's actually making it more competitive and more expensive. We are in an economic Ponzi scheme where we need more people to pay for the infrastructure for the people who are already here, all while the quality of that infrastructure declines. This is the shift that will define the next decade of Canadian politics. The impact on the next generation, the children growing up right now, is perhaps the most tragic part of this shift. They are growing up in a world where the idea of owning a home is as fantastical as a fairy tale. The visceral pain for a Gen Z Canadian is the realization that they might be the first generation in Canadian history to have a lower standard of living than their parents. This is a fundamental break in the Canadian social contract. The shadow fact is that youth unemployment and underemployment are significantly higher than the headline numbers suggest. Many are stuck in gig work with no benefits, no security, and no future. The curiosity gap is, what does a society look like when its youth have no stake in the future? When you can't build equity, you don't take risks. You don't start businesses. You don't innovate. You just survive. This shift is creating a generation of economic nomads who are ready to leave at a moment's notice. The loyalty to the maple leaf is being tested by the reality of the price of rent. We are failing our children by leaving them a country that is a playground for the wealthy and a prison for the worker. There is a myth of the great wealth transfer, the idea that the trillions of dollars held by boomers will soon pass down to their children and save the economy. But there is a shadow fact here. Much of that wealth is being liquidated to pay for the astronomical costs of private long-term care and healthcare. The inheritance that Gen X and millennials are counting on is being eaten by the very system that failed to provide adequate public care. The visceral reality is that the family home, the last bastion of middle-class wealth, is often sold to pay for a luxury nursing home that provides subpar care. The emotional pain of seeing a lifetime of hard work vanish into the coffers of a private care corporation is the final insult. The curiosity gap is, where does the wealth actually go? It doesn't stay in the family. It flows upward to the shareholders of the care facilities and the banks that hold the reverse mortgages. This shift is the final stage of the middle-class liquidation. The wealth transfer isn't going to the next generation. It's going to the corporate elite. This is the reality of the new Canada.
So, how do we survive this shift? The visceral truth is that the old advice is dead. You cannot save your way out of this. You cannot work hard your way out of this. you have to become financial gorillas. This means diversifying your income outside of the Canadian dollar. It means looking at assets that the government can't easily tax or inflate away. It means understanding that the CRA, the BOC, and the big banks are not your friends. The emotional shift is moving from trust to skepticism. The shadow fact is that those who are thriving in Canada right now are those who have decoupled their wealth from the domestic economy. They earn in USD, they invest in global markets, and they treat their Canadian residency as a lifestyle choice rather than an economic necessity. This is the survival strategy for the new middle class. You have to stop playing by the 1990s rules in a 2024 reality. The curiosity gap is, are you willing to change your entire worldview to survive? The shift is happening whether you are ready or not. The question is, will you be a victim of the shift, or will you find a way to navigate the wreckage?
As we conclude this deep dive, remember that the major economic shift is not a single event, it is a process. It is the slow, grinding transition of Canada from a land of opportunity to a land of managed decline. The visceral pain you feel is the friction of that transition. But there is power in awareness. By understanding the shadow facts, the GDP per capita trap, the housing feudalism, and the tax bite, you can begin to make decisions that protect your family. The curiosity gap we leave you with is this. If the middle class is the heart of Canada, and the heart is being hollowed out, what will be left of the true North strong and free in 10 years? We are at a crossroads. The decisions you make with your TFSA, your mortgage, and your career in the next 24 months will likely determine your standard of living for the next 20 years. Don't be a spectator to your own financial demise. The shift is here. The question is, what are you going to do about it? In our next video, we will explore the specific safe havens for Canadian capital that the big banks don't want you to know about. Stay vigilant, because the Canadian dream isn't just dying,